Hey guys, welcome to Black Coffee Builds. My name is Henry. So Mother's Day is about a week away, and if you're anything like me, you're just now starting to think about what to do. Don't panic though, because I'm going to show you how to make a quick and easy gift that she's sure to love. It's this little birdhouse, which is really simple to make, and it took about 2 to 3 hours of work including filming. If you take into account glue and paint drying, you do need about 2 to 3 days. It's a fun little project that will without fail show the moms out there that we appreciate them. So let's get started with what we'll need to make this project. So you're gonna need some wood glue, a ruler, clamps. So these are small F clamps and woodpecker square clamps, which are great for making boxes. Pencil, sandpaper, paint and or wood stain, paint brushes. These are foam, but you also want bristle brushes too, and painter's tape. It's helpful to have a miter saw and a table saw, but you could manage with just one if needed. You'll need a drill and either a spade bit or a Forstner bit like this. Both work just fine, I just happen to prefer the Forstner bit. And of course you'll need eye and ear protection. Now you're ready to start. So the first thing you're going to want to do is cut the wood down to size. The platform and the roof of the house that I'm building are 7 inches by 9 inches. So I'm marking 7 inches in every few inches, and I plan to cut down that line. I decided to put a strip of painter's tape along the cut line because I'm using plywood and that tends to chip out along the cut. Make sure to adjust the height of your blade so it's just above the thickness of your board. Then adjust your fence so it matches the width that you want to cut. Now that the boards are cut to the correct width, I'm going to use the miter saw to cut to the correct length. Instead of measuring the second board, I'm just going to use the first board as a reference and mark a line where I need to cut so that they match exactly. Now I have the pieces for the platform and the roof cut down to size, so I'm going to use the remaining board and cut the width down an additional inch to 6 inches, and this will be used for the walls of the actual house. The dimensions of the actual house are going to be 6 inches by 6 inches. So there are going to be 4 pieces, 2 of them will be 6 by 6 inches, the other 2 pieces will be 6 inches by an amount less than 6 inches. In my case, the wood was 3/4 of an inch thick, so I took 6 inches minus 2 times 3/4 of an inch, which ended up being 4.5 inches. For a consistent look on the house, I cut along the grain with the table saw and against the grain with the miter saw. You don't have to do this, but I tend to think it looks a little better. The next step is to drill out the hole or the door to the house. To do this, find the length of the opposite corners of the face of the house and then mark the center point and do that for both sides. Once you found the center point, you can start drilling. I would start slow, and once you've made 1 or 2 rotations against the actual material, I would put the bit in reverse and do a few cycles in reverse, and that'll hopefully avoid splitting of the wood. After you've wore out a bit of the material, swap out your bit for a regular pilot hole bit and just drill a pilot hole right through the center. And after you've done this, put your Forstner or spade bit back on and start drilling out the hole again, but start from the back this time. And repeat the process that we did in the front. This way you'll also avoid splintering out wood in the back of the hole. The next step is completely optional, but I think it adds a lot of what makes this project cool. You're going to raise the table saw blade up just a little bit, maybe 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch above the surface. Then you're going to run the walls through the blade and it's going to give it a really cool texture and design. Before you use the actual walls, run a scrap piece of wood through to make sure it's the height that you want. For my walls, I spaced the lines out every inch, and I did 2 blades thickness instead of just 1. So after running all the walls through the first time, I moved the fence over just 1/16 of an inch and ran them through again, so it made the gap just a little bit wider. On the longer pair of the 2 walls, in addition to running the blade through the face of the wall, you're also going to run it through the sides of the wall, because those are going to run contiguous with the shorter pieces of the wall. Next, you can optionally cut an angle into the walls so that the roof doesn't just run parallel to the platform. It gives it kind of a cool look. This was a little bit tricky and I probably didn't do it the smartest way that I could have. The most accurate way to do this would probably to make a jig to cut an angle consistently, but I figured I could cut it close enough freehand with a miter saw, and it turned out fine. So on one side of the wall, you're going to want to mark how far down you want to cut. And if you cut from the top of the wall on one side down to the mark on the other side, this is naturally going to form your angle. After making the first cut, just use the wall as a reference for the second cut so they turn out the same. Make sure to save the cutoff piece from the side walls. These will come in handy later for clamping purposes. After cutting the angle on your two side walls, Use one of the walls as a reference against your table saw and adjust the angle of the blade on your saw so that it matches the angle of your freshly cut wall. Lock the blade in place. Cut out the angle on the front and back wall so that the roof can rest flat on the walls. Now it's time for everybody's favorite part of the project, which is sanding. And it's especially fun on this because there are tight little grooves you've got to dig down into. Now it's time for the glue up. I would just do 2 pieces at a time. So it's going to take 2 sessions of gluing basically to get the box together. If you don't have these woodpecker square clamps, that's not a problem. There are other types of clamps that can be just as effective. But if you have the means to get them, they are pretty handy. There's likely going to be some glue squeeze out, so I would try to clean that up a little bit before it dries. Once the first round of gluing is over, you're pretty much going to repeat the process to glue the entire box together. Okay, now we're going to paint and stain. This part is totally up to your discretion on what color you want to paint or stain your project. What I did was stain the box and paint the platform and roof, but you could do the opposite, or you could stain the entire thing or paint the entire thing. It's totally up to you. The paint I used was Bear Marquee. The color was Trailing Vine, which I had used on a previous project, so I was just using it again. The stain I used was from Cabot or Cabot, not sure how to pronounce it. It's called Australian Timber Oil, and it was the natural color. I think it looks really good. If you do use this stuff, make sure you wear gloves when applying it. It's really sticky and impossible to wash off. I used a foam brush to apply the stain to the face of the walls, but you'll definitely want a bristle brush to apply it inside the ridges because it's pretty much impossible with the foam brush. Now it's time to glue the roof and the platform to the house. So you're going to want to do one at a time. And for each glue up, use the cutoff pieces from when you cut the angle out of the house, which will help if you're using F-clamps like I am to make it less of an awkward angle for them to grip down. You might also want to use a towel or something as a barrier between the clamp and the project because it can leave an indent if you clamp it too tightly. One thing you could do that I didn't do here was mark off where the house is going to rest on the platform and the roof and not paint in that area, and that way there's less paint inside the house where the birds will actually be, and it might make it a little bit easier for glue up. The last step of the project is to apply some urethane. I used Varathane Ultimate Spar Urethane, which is an oil-based product. Make sure whatever product you use is rated for exterior use because this is going to be something that is left outside all the time. I just put a few coats of the poly over the paint, and I didn't put it over the stain because that's already rated for exterior use. And then you're pretty much done. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please share in the comments how this project turned out for you and if the mothers in your life appreciated your work. If you enjoyed the video, hit the like button. And if you want to see more content like this, consider subscribing. I'll see you guys on the next project right here on Black Coffee Builds.